Hello and welcome to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. Today we are going to be talking about a really good game called Kathy Rain. Have you played Kathy Rain, Paul?
I sure have, mate. It's funny you ask.
Because I haven't. I only know it's good because everyone tells me so. But I have not played it yet because I know nothing about it except for the fact that it exists. So maybe you should try to convince me to play Kathy Rain.
I, I'm gonna. You're gonna be. Consider yourself convinced, right?
I am I that is horrible so far. I mean, don't get me wrong. Kathy Rain looks great, and I really want to play it. I just you know me. I have motivational issues. Like I really want to play it, but really wanting to play something is not enough to get me to actually do that thing. So as much as I could want to play Kathy Rain, and I own it, and it's on my list, and you've been telling me to play it, I'm going to need a little bit more of a push than that. So this is your time to convince me to play Kathy Rain before we get to actually officially talk about it on the show.
All right. Well, here's to me not talking you out of playing Kathy Rain. I think if I just leave it alone, we have a decent chance as it is.
If we leave it right now, I will spend the entire rest of my life wanting to play the game.
Just needing your peers' approval to go forth and do it. If only he
I
got
need
that.
something. I need a motivational boost.
No, I'm your hype man. It's like Sunday, Sunday, Sunday over here. We're
Mm.
gonna fucking yeah. I
And
know
I
I
think
don't.
I think it's only fair because for those of you who don't know, we just released or are releasing, depending when I get around to it. I am pretty lazy. We will be releasing a Patreon exclusive episode because I actually somehow managed to convince you to play Doki Doki Literature Club, and doesn't really fit into the classic gaming theme. So we decided to release it as a Patreon only exclusive. That'll be coming up shortly. But since you were so gracious as to play a game at my recommendation, now is your turn to pay it forward onto me.
All right. Well, I'm ready. I'm finished convincing myself that I could convince you.
All right.
I processed that. You could anyone listening could clearly hear my lack of grit in behind my voice there, but I think I've gathered it up. I'm convinced I can convince you.
Okay.
Have faith in me. Here we go.
So here are the parameters of this episode. Number one, no spoilers. Nothing that will ruin the experience. You have to convince me without ruining. Because spoilers will only encourage me not to play it anymore. That has happened quite a few times where just my desire to either play a game or watch a movie or a show or read a book, once I know what's going to happen, I just don't really even care anymore. So don't spoil, rule number one. Rule number two, like I said, I have really wanted to actually play Kathy Rain, but for the purpose of this episode, I am sitting myself down, lying back in my chair, and folding my arms and just being low, like, no, you're not going to convince me, so you better convince me.
Kathy Rain dies at the end. Fuck.
You son of a bitch.
I'm kidding. Although now you know
What?
that she
God
doesn't.
damn it!
Or
Spoilers,
does
dude.
she?
Ah!
I just gave you a riddle, son. You're going to work that out. I
Now you're making me just not want to play it out of spite.
There's a 99% chance she lives or dies.
All right, I'm not going to inquire further into the odds of that. Now, just explain to me why would I like this game? I feel like I am a pretty good representative of the classic gaming community. I'm totally not, but we're going to pretend. I like to think that I am, like the guy who represents everybody. I'm totally not, but if you can convince me, I'm sure you'll convince other people to play the game.
He totally can't. Um, yes, you're the goddamn Canadian ambassador of these games.
There you go. I represent classic gaming Canada.
Yes, you carry the nation on your shoulders, bro.
All right. So
All right,
convince
so
Canada to play Kathy Rain.
all right, Canada. Listen, you turn that hockey down for a second. I got something to say. Um, Did I do a racism? Can you do a racism on a nation? Let's move on. That's a dodgy subject. Back
Let's
to
not.
Kathy Rain. I endorse hockey and its players and watching. So, Kathy Rain, A Detective is Born is the official title, which is a better title than just Kathy Rain because it adds some sprinkle to the end. You know what I mean? A little dazzling.
Yes.
Is
I
this
actually
working
was
so
not
far?
aware that there was a subtitle to it. I did not know that was what it was called.
See, you're learning
Which,
already.
yeah. Is that a spoiler? Is like the game about a detective being born?
Yeah, it starts in the fetal stages of life. It's a slow burner. All right, we'll get serious. So we were talking
I wanted to
off
see
air.
how they got pregnant.
Oh, that's in the game actually. I'll tease that later,
All
very
right.
carefully, a carefully constructed teasing. But
Okay.
anyways, so we were talking off air about Sierra, Rick and I was, and we said these things. We were like, the Quest series seems different. When I say Quest, Police Quest, King's Quest, all the quests, they seem a little different than the Laura Bows and the Gabriel Knights and the Conquest of Longbow and Camelot. And that being said, this game it carries very much on the little darker side of Sierra, the Laura Bow Gabriel Knight side. It follows a really similar path, and it's the perfect little back scratcher for that nostalgia bit in your brain, um, the back of your brain, yes, because you need a back scratcher, right? So it's got this cool investigative detective story, basically. So
I'm not sure
there's
if you. Sorry to cut you off. I'm not sure if you happen to notice I did not laugh.
yeah, it was painful, mate, painful. I just grabbed my collar like Rodney Dangerfield and moved on.
This
Uh,
is the audience that you're working with right now.
yeah, no, it's a tough crowd. It really
Yeah.
is. I thought
Canada is not impressed.
I thought I fluffed you enough off mic, mate. Jesus. Um, all right. So anyway, that was a painful, chunky intro. Stick with me though. I promise.
All right.
It gets better. So the game's got it's got okay. Let me back up. It's a classic point and click game. Um, in which that you point and then click on things. Shit, man, I'm panicking. I can feel your
Well, you're
eyes
doing
staring at
better
me.
now than you were before. That's for sure.
Maybe I can get you to play this game out of pity, if nothing else. Christ. Um, all right, so what this game does awesomely, why I got to stop being weird about this, like a sales pitch, and just actually get into convincing you. You got to play it, do it.
Okay.
It's got great atmosphere. I really enjoyed the background art. It does awesome homage to pixel art, lo-fi art of its era. Very detailed. Kathy Rain is kind of hot. I mean, God hand placed each pixel. I'm just saying.
That is a
She's
plus one. Um.
You'll never see 23 pixels smashed together that look so good.
All right. So let me guide you a little bit on this on what it might take to convince me. So first of all, and again, spoiler free. What is it about? What is the game? What is there's rain.
One would think that you would talk about what the game's about in trying to convince someone to play it.
Yes.
All right, good call. Right, so here's what the game's about. It's really cool. It's got a mysterious kind of background. Obviously, you play as Kathy Rain. You're going back to your hometown to the funeral of your grandfather. So you wake up in your college dorm, you find out this horrible news about your grandfather. You go back home to his funeral, and then you go for a little chat with your nan afterwards. His wife, right? Yeah, and
That would make
she,
sense.
what yeah, old-fashioned people. What's cool about this game is that the the mystery when it's first told, the reason Kathy starts investigating to begin with is a really small kind of question that's asked. It's a curious kind of thing, something you want to actually investigate, but it's kind of like an average problem, an average thing to investigate. It's not this huge we found alien footprints in our backyard. It's just a real subtle that's kind of weird about Grandpa. I should look into that a little, and so it doesn't kind of knock you off your socks like, oh my god, somebody in the room's been murdered. It's a real subtle sort of situation, and it just snowballs and cascades into a deeper and deeper rabbit hole. Uh, to where just the mystery really thickens, in other words. So it's got an awesome pacing because it kind of settles you into the game. It raises a question that's not too absurd. It's a very realistic, curious problem. And just every time you take a step forward, this game tends to ask more questions before it starts answering any of them.
Okay.
That was a good sentence. You
That
like that?
was, yes.
Sweet. All right. I wrote that one down too. And then I wrote down the word blue cocktail next to that. I have no idea what that means.
I
Autocorrect.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that a clue?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Fitting in the theme here.
Now I got to look up blue
Um,
cocktail and fall into that rabbit hole.
I know. I hope it's not something horrible. Hmm. All right. Well, I'll leave some space for editing in case it was something horrible. Go. Um, so the other thing this game does, it does a lot of things really well. The artwork's amazing, the atmosphere is amazing. Your desire to find out the things that Kathy's trying to find out is what makes it great, because
Mm.
that's the part that gets me engrossed in the game. Like when she hears something that she's curious to investigate, I immediately wanted to know the answer to. So it's like a hard game to walk away from because it keeps you genuinely curious about what's around each turn. And the way the story develops and kind of narrates itself throughout different characters and weaves them all together is really masterfully done. I mean, it's basically a really strong story, and then
Mm.
everything else, all they had to do was kind of not mess up everything else, like the artwork,
Right.
etc.
If there's one thing I actually do know about Kathy Rain is I did see some screenshots, and that based on that alone, I pretty much bought the game. I don't even think I bought it on sale. I think I just was like, oh, that looks really cool, and I bought it because it looks gorgeous. It does look beautiful. I know that much. I've only seen like a handful of screens, whatever was put up on some. I don't even remember where I first saw it, but just looking at it, it looks amazing. So pretty much don't even need to convince me any further on that part because that's kind of the selling point as to why I literally bought the game. Um, but I guess as we've discussed before, I am more of a Sierra fan than a LucasArts fan, but just barely. Like I love LucasArts games. They're some of my favorite games of all time. So are some Sierra games. It's very I can't really live without one or the other. So keeping in mind that this isn't going to be a deal breaker or anything like that, would you compare Kathy Rain to be more in the style of Sierra or more in the style of LucasArts?
That's a great question, mate. Yeah, as you know, I have the same stance as you, where it might tilt a little more on Sierra, but I love them both the same. Plenty of experience with them the same, so I can say I think I wouldn't say it leans heavily to one side, but it definitely is more of a Sierra title
Yeah.
to me.
Or is
Um,
there, obviously there's a third option. Is it just sort of its own thing? Like, does it not actually feel derivative of either style? Is it its own thing? Like, is it reminiscent of either of the two, or does it just sort of like, is it just itself?
that I'm gonna say that it reminds me more of Sierra than itself or LucasArts. But not to obviously take away from the game. It's its own thing. It stands on its own. We're all snowflakes, etc.
Hmm.
Because I don't want to take that away from it. It could stand on its own, and I guess
Of
in
course, yeah,
reality it
yeah.
does, since those companies don't exist anymore. But I would still say, even over that, it reminds me specifically of a Sierra game.
Okay.
And I think that that's really, really cool. Speaking for myself, knowing that it will influence you as well, cheeky, because I think we both noticed a lot of the throwback indie adventure titles, especially in pixel art and things like that, that have come out. Not all, but I think the majority have been a little bit more of a LucasArts remake than a Sierra remake.
Mm.
That's just my opinion, general observation. Sometimes, the Sierra remakes would be like Phil or Julia's games where they're proper passes. God love them. They're so awesome. But
Yeah.
but when you see like
That would
other
be
than
sorry, just for those listening, that would be the Crimson Diamond by Julia Minamata and Cascadia Quest by Phil Fortier.
yes, exactly, and Snail Trek too. Check that out by Phil.
Right. Yes.
But
Eltrek.
it reminds me of a Sierra game, and I love that because I think a lot of the more recent games, besides the aforementioned, have been more in the LucasArts style. People have been more apt to remake Monkey Island style games than Sierra SCI style games, in my opinion. So I think it was like a really welcome addition in this market to have something that's pure Sierra. In other words, the game, it doesn't do anything new, and that's okay. Like it's nice
Right.
to see an old formula just knocked out of the park instead of trying to reinvent itself or be some gimmicky standout, which are sometimes great. And ironically, this developer's next game, Whispers of a Machine, has some gimmicks that are amazing, the good kind of gimmicks. So they
Right.
did do that, but in stark contrast to their newer title, this is just like a classic point and click game, which is why I say Sierra. It doesn't really muck about. It's got a few little subtle sort of haha jokes like Sierra, but it doesn't try and be actually funny like Lucas.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like a pure hard boiled, adventure investigative detective game. I switch words because that one's easier. Um, I know you haven't played this game yet. I don't believe. Maybe you have, but it reminds me a lot, specifically of Gabriel Knight. It reminds me of the Laura Bowes as well, but Colonel's Bequest was a parser game, whereas Amon Ra was kind of a very bright daytime lit sort of game. So this one reminds me visually of Gabriel and storytelling wise of Gabriel Knight. Just a cool, like, case falls on your lap sort of thing.
Hmm.
But if you like
You
Laura
are
Bow, you
correct that
like
I
this.
have not played Gabriel Knight yet, which is one of my great shames as a Sierra fan and as somebody who is kind of supposed to be pretty well versed in a lot of these classic games, of which Gabriel Knight is one of the classics among classics. So yeah, we're going to um, ignore that fact for a minute and not really sell me too heavily on the Gabriel Knight and draw attention to the fact that I have not actually played that one yet.
See, and here's a fun fact for everyone. I knew that he did not, but I threw in or maybe you have, just in case you wanted an out.
No,
See,
I'm nothing if
he's an
not
honest man.
yeah, I'm nothing if not honest to a fault. I just don't necessarily always volunteer information, but in this case, I know that if I give you any room to do so, you will continue to sell me on the similarities to Gabriel Knight, which are just going to go right over my head.
Yes, good point. Well, I'll switch back to Laura Bow since you're well familiar with them
Yes.
and like them very much. It's you can't like Laura Bow and not like Kathy Ray, and it's not even because of the female protagonist who's great. Um, in the game. In other words, it's not because they're both female detective games like you automatically like them. It's just it's definitely in that love letter sort of genre of game where these creators clearly were in love with the Laura Bow games,
Hmm.
to come up with a more open world sort of investigation that involves traveling. Has a nice fast travel mechanic too on the motorcycle.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I mean, I think its strongest point is how it is the quite on paper almost average. Like that was a terrible sentence to convince someone. It, its strongest point is its traditional laurels. Is
Right.
how it just tries to do something that's been done before just really fucking well,
Yeah.
and it does. So if you just like you can't really scratch that itch sometimes of like man
Well,
I would.
sometimes that's what you want or what I want. Sometimes I just sort of like, as you know, sometimes I do just prefer simplicity over complexity. Sometimes I just have that like, well, give if you're going to if you're going to appeal to my sensibilities as a classic gamer, then give me a classic. Like don't I'm not saying don't, but it's not necessarily going to scratch the itch if you're going to be like, oh, look at all the stuff that we do different. Sometimes I do just want something that's just very here's here's simple and good, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's really scratches that itch
Mm-hmm.
of just it's
And
comfortable.
again, just to so as not to miscommunicate to our audience, I am fully in favor of doing things differently and trying new things and taking risks. I love risk, but at the same time, sometimes when you want a game to revive that experience, sometimes you just want a game that revives that experience.
Exactly. It's like a a constant, an anchor. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this nice familiarity where, like you said, I love when they try new things, and like this very developer went on to do, and happened to have nailed it as well. But like you said, nothing really, you know, it's its own thing. Sometimes we do just want something, safe and comfortable and familiar, and it does have that comfort food sort of vibe, like a warm blanket and
Yes.
uh, a lot of bread or something.
Okay.
I really
Paul's
like bread,
comfort
but
food is bread.
just bread, very dry
From
bread.
the days he
Um,
was a little pauper child, when he was a street urchin selling papers on the corner.
I still got bruises from where them suspenders laid on me.
From his
Oh, that's great.
newsy days.
Pauper. That's mint. But the other thing, the game has an awesome third act. And I know this is spoiler territory, so I'm going to stay vague and kind of short on this without saying anything to give it away. But the game takes not an unexpected turn. It's not an M Night Shyamalan twist. I bit my tongue, I think, during that. Anyway, so I'm not trying to I'm not trying to overhype the ending by making it sound like it's this grand twist or whatever. It's not. It's more this like decay. Rabbit hole is the best word. You're just so deep in the rabbit hole that it even affects the environments of the game, the
Oh.
artistic direction. Everything gets darker. Everything gets really interesting. And that was a pleasant surprise because it wasn't necessary, but it was welcome. Like they could have gone either way. I was already happy with it to just be what it was, but it does have this cool imaginatory sort of twist that goes on that's quite fascinating. So yes, I'll close with the strongest point I can really make. The game builds a world really well. Like from the atmosphere. With the sound effects are amazing. The score was done great and all, but the sound effects are awesome. Like so many scenes, there's this slow, relaxing but relentless rain playing.
Right.
So Kathy Rain's not just a clever name, but there's something about that rain that just like it really puts you in that mood, puts you in that kind of genre. It creates a very distinct mood. You hear in that rain, you definitely feel like you're Kathy Rain. And another, this is a pointless thing to add, but I have to say because I just remembered I'm an ex-smoker of cigarettes, and she smokes so many cigarettes in this game. It's fucking hard to watch. It's more like she smokes more than like a Tarantino film. Like, it had me itching my chest like Tyrone Bigum's like wanting some crack. It was hard to get through in that regard. But anyway, so it builds a world. It does awesome character development. Not only with Kathy but with everyone else in the game, and they handle there's a lot of people in the game and in the story, and they handle that like The Simpsons, with grace and fluidity. Like the Simpsons have such a massive universe, and they handle that well. Like Kathy Rain handles having a lot of people really well. You get just enough character development on everyone to care, or to get to predict what you're going to get from them. And it's kind of cool too because, like I said, the investigation itself is an unraveling situation. So it slowly unravels and kind of encroaches a lot of the town, like the whole town you're in. So it becomes important that it gets through the characters well, and builds them well. So yeah, I think that's my basic sales pitch.
All right.
I think. Do you have any questions or any objective a word there?
Um, it sounds good. It definitely, like I said, I went into this already being pretty well convinced I should play it. Is there any reason why I should play it like right effing now?
Yes, because we've done this episode, and now people got to hear what you thought about it.
Damn, that's a good point. Wow.
Got you in a
Okay.
corner, mate.
Yeah. I guess people are going to want to follow up on this soon.
Yeah, exactly. Gonna want to hear your thoughts, and now you're binded in contract.
All right. Well, I'm not going to set a timeline on that because even if I do play a game that's like, how long is the game typically?
I'd say without a walkthrough, it's probably 5 hours.
Okay, so it'll take me about a month
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's how
Yeah.
good I am at these games. 5 hours, all right. That'll take me about a month.
Well, I forgot who I'm talking to because you know I'm just as shit as you are, so maybe 7. Because a lot of times a game might take me like 7, and I'll say 5 for the average player.
Right.
But if you're on my level, as I know you are, yeah, maybe as much as 7. I'm not sure. That might be a stretch, but yeah, 5 or so hours. One other thing I'll say too. Speaking of walkthroughs, is that the one of the greatest parts of this game that I forgot to mention is the puzzles, because they're fucking achievable. They are so doable, and I think they did an awesome job of hitting that sweet spot. And I'm not giving grief to any games because honestly, I would have no idea how to make a puzzle that hits that sweet spot where you can't fix it right away, but it's not infuriating.
Right.
Um, I feel like if I design puzzles, they'd all either be too easy or impossible. Probably too easy though. Like that's to me almost what the more impressive. Like how do you make a puzzle that's not too easy, not too blatant, without being just bananas? But these puzzles are cool. Like if you want to solve it, you can, and it might take like 20 minutes. I don't hate to put a time on it because I don't know, but it takes some good thinking and some swings and misses. But that was the coolest part of this game, was I didn't feel the need to get a walkthrough. Like I think I did the first puzzle myself, and then I was like, all right, you know what? Let's see this through. We're gonna do this game your fucking self. Don't be a wank. And I was actually able to, and I'm shit at these games as well, so that says a lot.
All right, that is pretty impressive. I mean, I am curious now, especially when you say that the puzzles are so well balanced. I'm not entirely sure if I've really seen a well balanced puzzle, because, like you said, a lot of these games they sort of have either blatantly easy solutions, or it's just like there's no way you can figure it out. One of my pet peeves in video games, especially adventure games, is when a puzzle solution is either so easy that it's obvious, or if it is actually fairly rewarding enough, if it's balanced enough that you feel very much like you achieved something by figuring it out. You kind of feel proud of figuring it out.
Hmm.
Either one of those situations, and then the game just tells you what the solution is, basically, right? So number
Right.
one, if it was already so easy that I'm kind of like, oh, that's easy and obvious, and then the game further feels the need to explain it to me, that really pisses me off. And then almost as much, if not about it, like exactly the same, is when it's like, here's a puzzle. Oh, ooh, I know this, I figured it out, and then they're like, and here's how you solve it, and
Right. Right.
so it's cool. That's actually a really good thing to know, is that the puzzles are actually really well balanced that way, because that's something I see very rarely in games generally.
It's funny that adventure games are known for having just kind of, not shit puzzles, but just really hard puzzles, questionable puzzles, etc. That we often don't talk about them. We talk about the story, gameplay, art, etc. And and so it just goes to show how puzzles are usually kind of like baggage in
Mhm.
these games. Because you're right, like that's. I'm like, why didn't I think about the puzzles before? I'm like, we don't really talk about puzzles because they're usually a pain in the dick. Um,
They
but
just
yeah,
like yeah, they'll just oh, we did a puzzle here, and they'll throw in one of those like sliding block picture puzzles. Like, here, play
uh,
with that for an hour.
yeah, those things, aka the worst Happy Meal toys ever. When you get that little fucking plastic brick thing, I hate them. Uh, but no, you're right. It's such a such a sweet spot. That pocket of like they did a good job. You hit the nail on the head when you said you could actually feel proud of yourself. Like
Okay,
I
that's
think
good.
this game and maybe Thimbleweed were probably the like two of the only games I can think of where the puzzles were like actually fun from somebody who kind of hates puzzles. Like
Mm.
you get just hooked enough to want to see it through, and then when you actually do see it through, like, oh my god, I fucking did a puzzle, mate. I did one. I didn't go to GameFAQs once. Um,
Yeah. I just hate it when a game's sort of like, oh yeah, we've been going on about story for a while. Here, play with this Rubik's cube. And we
Right.
say, okay, well,
Right.
so just keep yourself busy for a while. We just need to think about the story for a bit.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's nothing worse than lazy puzzles. Actually, to build on what you're saying, this game doesn't do in a good way is I hate when adventure games. And sometimes it's okay, but when they overdo puzzles in spots like on a door, where it's like you can't go anywhere until this puzzle's solved. I like when you have to kind of figure out what the puzzle is. You know what I mean? Like as opposed
Yeah,
to just walking into it, like oh, and now we to get further we got to do this thing. I like when it's kind of like okay, well, what do I do next? And actually makes you look at your inventory and think about the story and the goals and what you need to accomplish next, and then be like, oh well, let's hop on the computer, and then bam, oh, I got this or that.
hmm
And the other thing too, that these puzzles in this game are actually really well fun. There's one puzzle I won't give anything away, but just to describe it, there's a puzzle that involves like an IT guy, a floppy disk, and using your computer and a scanner. And it's just kind of cool, like going through mechanics, like inserting a floppy disk, you hack a computer, you scan in audio and chop it up. I mean, it's actually like fun puzzles, which is
that's
I'm not
cool.
sure I could say that about any other game without really thinking about it.
Okay,
Not.
cool. Well, that definitely pushes me a little bit more to get motivated to play it. Is there anything else that you would like to um, uh, sell me on this game?
I'd like to sell to the audience the idea that you should spam Rick with hate mail until he plays it.
Yes. By the way, we have an email address now. It's mail@classicgamersguild.com because we're actually working on a website. It is currently undefined as to exactly what purpose it's going to serve, but I will let you know. Sorry, I've a bit of a cough. It's kind of one of the reasons why we didn't record this earlier. But one thing that is working is that we have an email address, mail@classicgamersguild.com. Send me your hate mail. Well, it just occurred to me that a lot of people listen to to these episodes just on like the what do you call it, embedded players on Twitter, what have you. I don't think people read the actual. I don't think they even get the opportunity to read the little write up where I actually give links to promote the show and what we do. So, as much as I really try to avoid, because I want this podcast to be enjoyable to the listeners, I try to avoid doing the whole call to action thing of like the like, comment, and subscribe kind of things. But every now and then, I feel like I should just kind of let people be aware that we are a Facebook group. You can look us up, the Classic Gamers Guild, on Facebook. We have a page, we have a group. Twitter, where a lot of you are probably actually listening to this right now, so you probably don't need it. But if you want to follow us on Twitter and you aren't already, we're at the CG Guild.
Do us
Um,
a follow.
yeah, we're on Patreon. If you want to just throw something in the tip jar. I'm not gonna push that too hard on you because we're not doing this for the money. But if you want to support us, the money goes towards paying for our hosting, website, and that sort of thing. None of it goes towards the hookers and blow that I dreamed of when I started this.
Yeah,
Um,
does not buy pornography.
so yeah, I think that settles that. I'm probably not going to bring that up for the next little while because, like I said, I try not to be too imposing or in your face about all our self promotion. Because I'd rather what's most important is that you enjoy the show and that we keep bringing you back one way or another. Uh, but that's the info. That's how you get a hold of us. Buy Kathy Rain and play it. See if you can play it before I do. This is now a challenge I'm throwing down. Let's race me on this. Play Kathy Rain before I do, and if you do, you can, I don't know, rub it in my face. Send me hate mail and brag that you've finished Kathy Rain before I did. You will know that I finished Kathy Rain because we'll put an episode about Kathy Rain as soon as I do.
Yes, and meanwhile, I will work on how to wrap these episodes up better myself.
Yeah, me too. This episode ended like so long ago, and we're still going. Um, but I mean, like I said, I'm not going to push the Patreon too much, too hard onto everybody, but we do, we are hoping to every once in a while put on exclusive episodes, uh, because people who do donate to us deserve something in return as a little show of gratitude. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, we are going to be putting out an episode on Doki Doki Literature Club that we recorded pretty shortly after we did our last week's episode about breaking the fourth wall. And those two may or may not be connected to each other. But you are going to want to play Doki Doki Literature Club before you listen to that episode, if you are going to listen to it at all, because you would have to give us money in order to do so. Anyways, that's all I was going to say about that. Paul, maybe you can just put me out of my misery right now.
Yes. Listen, everyone, don't do murder.
Hooray!